Ladies and gentlemen, we are live for another edition of the NASCAR Fantasy Podcast on the channel here this evening. We're going to talk about everything that happened in yesterday's Watkins Glen NASCAR Cup Series race, the return back to racing after a 2-week hiatus due to the Olympics going on. NBC covering the Olympics, so most of their crew and their team was out over in Japan. That just came to a close this weekend as NASCAR was coming back. It was great to see NASCAR back this weekend. I know I had missed it after 2 weekends of not having it. It wasn't so bad necessarily during the week because I didn't feel any different, especially with not having any practice or qualifying for most of the races this year and most of the races last year. So it didn't feel odd on like Friday or Saturday. But when Sunday hit and I wasn't working and there was no race on, it really did feel different because you got to remember this is the first actual full off weekend that the NASCAR Cup Series has seen since very early in the season when it was the weekend of Easter, because the only other off weekend they've had in between these 2 weeks and Easter would have technically have been the All-Star race at Texas. They were still actually at the track racing that Sunday, even though it was an All-Star weekend, it wasn't a points race. They were still racing. They were still working in the shop throughout the week as far as the teams were going. So first time we've seen everything come full-fledged anyway in the last 3 weeks. I think they needed at least 1 week off during these last couple of weeks. And it seemed like most of the teams and drivers kind of enjoyed the 2 week break. And now we've got 14 straight weeks of racing leading up until the eventual championship finale at Phoenix. Man, hard to believe we only have 13 races left this season already. It is going by pretty quick. We're already going to be in the second weekend of August next week at Indy. But anyway, let's talk about yesterday's race at Watkins Glen. First and foremost, there was only one caution for incident the entire race. It was actually in stage 2 when James Davidson had stalled out on the racetrack at lap number 24. Outside of that, yeah, no other caution for incident. It was a fairly clean race, but it was action packed and there was drama throughout. So we'll start off in stage number 1. We had Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano starting on the front row, with Keselowski starting on the pole. And we also had a driver by the name of Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell both starting at the rear of the field after failing inspection. Both of their crew chiefs were also ejected from the start of the race. Christopher Bell's crew chief was not ejected because he only failed inspection once. Chase Elliott had failed inspection multiple times, so that's why Alan Gustafson was not atop the crew chief pit box yesterday for Chase Elliott. But anyway, both drivers started at the rear. Probably two of the better, I'd say two of the top 3 drivers this year on road courses by the way things have gone, at least in the NASCAR Cup Series side of things. It was fun to watch them come from the back to the front. Midway through the stage, they were supposed to have a competition caution at lap number 10 due to no practice or qualifying throughout the course of the week. Just like every other race, they have not had practice or qualifying, not only this year, but last year as well. Really, any other race ever in NASCAR, if there was no practice or qualifying because of rain, they would have a competition yellow. So anyway, that was scheduled to be at lap 10, cutting the first stage in half. And 2 corners before the competition caution, Brad Keselowski makes his first of a few major mistakes in the race. He was leading the first 9 laps of the race. He got into turn 6. He wheel hopped it, overcooked the corner, spinning out, giving the lead to his teammate Joey Logano. It didn't look like he had a top 5 car early on, even though he was leading. I think Joey Logano was being very patient, not wanting to, risk getting into his teammate, which is, kind of odd, coincidentally, because of things that happened later in the race. But anyway, at that point in time, he was just trying to put some pressure on him. If there was a mistake or a door open that was wide enough for Logano to make a pass and make a clean pass on Keselowski, I think he would have done it. But knowing the competition caution was coming in at lap 10 very early in the race, I don't think Logano was going to completely overforce the issue. He wanted to keep the Penske cars running 1-2, being a team player, in my opinion, there. Because Kyle Larson looked to be just as fast, if not faster. We would see that by the end of the day than both of those guys. And he was tucked in line behind there. Denny Hamlin was closing in. I think Truex was closing in there for a little bit as well. Byron might have been up there. So you had like 5 cars within 2 seconds of the lead at that competition yellow. Unfortunately, though, Keselowski had spun out, leaving him to have to hit pit road, along with pretty much the only other drivers that come into the pits would have been Chase Elliott and then everybody else outside the top 20. And the only reason Keselowski pitted is because he likely had flat spotted one of his tires. Ethan R6R6, welcome to the stream as well. I let everyone down. Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. So that was the main drama in stage 1. Actually, late in stage 1, Brad Keselowski had spun out another time in turn 1. kind of overcooked it. It wasn't a complete spin out. It was like a half spin, but he did lose a couple positions out of it and obviously lost a lot of time on top of it as well. It was the worst race I think I've ever seen, the sloppiest race I've ever seen Brad Keselowski run. Just the fact that I mean, and this is a track that he has had success in the past, but I even mentioned during the predictions video yesterday, it has been a while since he's actually found that success. It has been really since 2013 since he had competed for wins at Watkins Glen. So although he has three second place finishes all 3 years in a row and competed for those years, really in the Gen 6 era, he has not really been that great at Watkins Glen. I didn't expect him to have a good day yesterday, and I wasn't expecting him to spin out on his own 3 times, but he did that twice of them in those first 18 laps in stage one. So anyway, the stage one results, his teammate Joey Logano did lead the final 10 laps of the stage as well. Kyle Larson was second. Denny Hamlin was third. Tyler Reddick was fourth. Good stage points there for the bubble driver. William Byron was in the top five for most of the day, finished fifth there. Kyle Busch sixth. Alex Bowman in seventh. Chase Elliott from the rear to eighth at the end of stage one. Just unbelievable. In 20 laps, he was able to go from the back to eighth place. That's just insane. That goes to show how much talent he's got on road courses, especially what he ended up doing later in the race. Austin Dillon ninth, and Eric Jones actually had a pretty solid day, at least early on. He ended up rounding out the top 10 in stage one. So again, Logano with a playoff point there. Remember, he's only got one race win on the season. He does have a few stage wins now, another one after yesterday. In stage number two, we mentioned that James Davidson had stalled out on the racetrack. That was the only caution for incidents just a few laps into the second stage, kind of splitting the strategy up maybe a little bit, and for most drivers, making it a 2 pit stop race for the drivers who weren't going to pit towards the end or at the end of stage number two. Their pit stops at the end of stage one, and then the pit stops, they were going to stay out at the end of stage two so they could pit as soon as that window opened in the final stage with about 30 laps to go or so, because the final stage is going to be about 50 laps. By the time they went green, I think it was like 45 or 46. So they were able to save fuel under that caution, under the stage break as well, to make it on 2 stops to the end of the race. Pretty much, Martin Truex Jr. dominated the second stage. He did have a lot of pressure on him from Eric Jones. Late, at least, it seemed like Jones was, or sorry, not Eric Jones. I said that yesterday a couple times too. Christopher Bell in the 20 car. Bell had finally gotten to second place, getting around Kevin Harvick, probably with about 8 laps to go in the stage or so, and he was about 2.2 seconds back. He actually ran down Truex to about 1.2 seconds, and then I think with about 3 laps to go, he thought that, okay, I'm not going to be able to really catch him and pass him, so I'm just going to save my stuff here because there is still going to be another stage after this, and they were probably planning on staying out at the end of stage two, which they did. So he saved his equipment there. Truex started to open that gap up those final few laps after it looked like Bell was going to at least try to make a run for the stage. So Martin Truex Jr. gets the easy stage two victory. As mentioned, Christopher Bell second, Kevin Harvick third, Kyle Larson fourth, and Chase Briscoe rounded out the top 5. He had a pretty solid day, especially in the second half of the race. Ross Chastain peaked in there, finishing 6th on stage, Matt DiBenedetto 7th. Denny Hamlin fell back to 8th, Joey Logano fell back to 9th, and Kyle Busch rounded out the top 10 in the second stage. So the final stage went caution-free. Again, the strategy for those drivers who did not pit at the end of stage two, really the only drivers that did pit at the end of stage two were drivers that were running mid-pack, if not further back, well outside the top 15. Pretty much the top 15 cars kept their track position. They stayed out of the pits at the end of stage two. They were going to pit at the time the pit window was going to open with about 35 laps to go. So that is exactly what happened. And we saw a fantastic battle for the lead between Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, and Kyle Larson, pretty much from the beginning of the final stage up until the start of those green flag pit stops with about 30 laps to go. So a good 15-lap battle between those three. It's we had seen during the course of that Kyle Larson going into turn one underneath Bell. Bell was trying to block him off, and then Bell went up the track knowing that, okay, I'm not going to enter the corner this deep. And then they were about 3 wide going into turn one. Truex was able to hold on to the lead. I don't know how they didn't get into one another during that course of things. That was really impressive. And the fact that they all held their positions and stayed under a blanket. Nobody pulled away from anybody in that situation as well. It was just great fun action to watch those guys kind of slide around the track all day long, but especially that point on older tires at the beginning of the stage. That was really fun to watch. And then we saw a couple laps after the fact. Larson decided to make that same move in turn one on Bell. Bell did not throw the block. Larson ended up getting under him, had probably a half a car under him, and was actually on the curbing in turn one. I don't think Christopher Bell gave him enough room. Ultimately, there was contact, and Bell spun out, giving Truex about a 1 second lead after that happened, but then Larson ran him down before the start of the pit stops and was trying to pass him, couldn't get around him, and would wait to settle the score with the pit crews on pit road. As far as that incident, my take on it, we covered the race yesterday. We had a live realistic broadcast during the course of the races we have for many of the races on race weekends this year. Anyway, my take on it hasn't changed. I thought it was a racing incident, really. I don't think Larson absolutely dumped Bell. Larson was very apologetic about it in his post-race interview after the race, but I think that was just him being the bigger man in a sense. Obviously, we didn't get to see Christopher Bell's take on it. This is not the first time we've seen a run-in with these two earlier this year. Remember, Dirt Bristol won. They were battling for position, and then the 20th Bell had lost control of his car on his own, and Larson had nowhere to go, and they kind of backed into it. We obviously know that they have a rivalry on dirt, a friendly rivalry, not like a grudge match rivalry, but a rivalry on dirt nonetheless. So they race around each other a lot, and I think to have that incident in NASCAR spill over into NASCAR on a road course nonetheless. It'll be interesting to see how that might transpire going forward, especially having another road course race next week. We'll see if they, maybe we see some retaliation. Maybe Bell races Larson a tad bit harder knowing that happened. But as of right now, I don't think there's anything too major that's going to boil over. But don't be surprised if we see that happen, especially with them both being relatively young drivers. Larson's more experienced than Bell, but still relatively young drivers. Oni, Trevor Grimes, welcome to the stream as well. Let's see here. Keegan, that was bull. What I do? I have no clue what you're talking about. See, had no idea Chase Elliott rebounded to second place finish, behind a teammate. Yeah, Chase Elliott did rebound. So again, that led into the final pit stops of the race. Kyle Larson had ended up pulling out. First of all, going into the pits, like I mentioned, he was about a second off the lead after the contact with Bell. Pit stops came about 3 laps after that contact. And he closed into about 0.8 of a second roughly. He cut a couple more tenths off on Truex. But going into the pits, and I think it was a mixture of him probably not knowing Truex was going to come to pit road. I don't think Truex had his hand out the window. He probably wanted to keep it a surprise because if he could have pitted and then Larson didn't realize, he's going to pit, he was close behind him. Maybe if he would have stayed out another lap, that would have given Truex a lap advantage on tires, which definitely would have helped him out, especially in hindsight, considering that Larson's crew had the faster stop. But Larson also gained a lot of time coming to pit road. They were basically side by side coming into the pit lane. So at that point, it was really who was going to have the faster pit stop. Larson's crew beat Truex off of pit road, and it really wasn't even close. Larson's crew came out of the pits, and he was about a good second ahead of Martin Truex Jr. when they ended up on the racetrack. Story of the day, though, on the racetrack as far as a fight through adversity goes to Chase Elliott in the 9. So I mentioned he started at the back. He got up to 8th place by the end of stage number 1. And then midway through stage 2, about exactly halfway through stage 2, he had flat spotted the tires in turn 1. Heavy braking zone there, the hard 90 downhill right-handed corner. He locked the tires up, I think the front tires, believed he might have flat spotted it, didn't want to take any risks with blowing a tire and ending his day early, knowing he had a car capable to win the race. So after fighting through most of the field at that point in time, again, got up to 8th place, had to pit, lost all that track position. At the end of stage 2, he was outside the top 30. So on that final stage restart, he went from outside the top 30 up to second in the final 46 laps under green. Not only that, with about 20 laps to go, he was 10.7 seconds off the lead, had actually cut the lead down to about 1.8 seconds with about 3 laps to go, especially when Kyle Larson had caught heavy lap traffic. He was just chipping away. At one point, he was about a half a second a lap faster, which is why he even had a run at Larson there late. But with 20 laps at a road course. That is a long time. All things considered, it's over 20 minutes of just pushing the car as hard as he possibly can, and he just used up too much of his car. Really, that was what he had to do if he was going to have a chance, especially with lap traffic late. That's what gave him an opportunity. If he wasn't pushing that hard, he wouldn't have closed in that much, and that just goes to show how much better Chase Elliott is than really anybody when it comes to racing. You could see that back at Sonoma when these guys ran 1-2 when Larson won that race. That Chase Elliott had a little bit older tires at the end of that race and was still putting the pressure on Kyle Larson that if Larson made just a tiny sliver of a mistake, Elliott was going to be there to capitalize for the win. So fighting the odds again here with a car that was just starting to fall apart because of how much he was pushing it there those final couple laps to still get it to 1.8 seconds was just very impressive. Once he caught the lap traffic, Larson had gotten through it, so then Elliott started to lose a little bit more time and ultimately, I believe, finished about 3 seconds behind Larson at the end of the race. So Kyle Larson gets his 5th win of the season, 6 if you count the All-Star race, continuing this tear. And I think a lot of it has to go with, and I didn't even really talk about this, how many drivers were actually racing during the 2 week break that the Olympics had? Because I don't think there were too many drivers racing. The only guys that I know for a fact were racing during this 2 week break were Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and Alex Bowman. They were all dirt racing. Chase Elliott might have done something too. I don't know. But I don't know of any other of the Cup Series regulars that were actually racing during this 2 week break. And maybe just that alone helped out Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell. I mean, they were in the top 3 basically all day long, or at least from stage 2 on. Larson was in the top 3 all day, but Bell started at the back, obviously, so he wasn't going to get up there by the end of stage 1, but by the end of stage 2, he was second. So I think that really does kind of go into play of how they were so good. Plus, these are road course series tracks, especially for Larson's sake, that he has had laps on before. I mean, he won at Sonoma earlier this season, which is the only other road course we've ran this year that he actually has experience in a Cup car running on the road course. I don't think he really has any experience at Road America, and he still had a good day. He was in right around like 5th through 8th most of the day. Coda obviously was a new track for everybody, and he still ran well there. Maybe didn't quite. I mean, he didn't win the race, but he did finish second. So again, he runs good there, but he's not as dominant as what he was at Sonoma and even yesterday at Watkins Glen. So I think that kind of has to be put into perspective as well. It would be difficult for Chase Elliott to beat Larson. I might have missed something else in the chat there. I only got the Toyota winner. Oh, you're talking about the fantasy. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that right after this. Also, there was an incident I didn't even state that I mentioned that Brad Keselowski had spun out 3 times yesterday. He had actually spun out the 3rd time in the final stage. It just completely overshot turn 1. He passed like 2 cars on the inside of the racetrack and it just completely spun out. I think he was spinning out trying to slow the car down because he was going to probably, if there was no other car there, if he didn't spin out, he might have been into the turn 1 wall head on like we've seen happen with some bad accidents like Denny Hamlin in the past and a couple other drivers there that could have been a hard accident. So I think that's why he tried to spin the car out. And he was hoping that when he had jumped all the way down to the inside like he did, that he was going to clear everybody and not hit anybody. Unfortunately, when he spun out, he did not clear everybody and actually clipped his teammate of all drivers, Joey Logano, who happened to be racing him cleanly earlier in the day. And then Keselowski had clipped him, taking out both Penske cars. Ryan Blaney also spun, I think, in stage 2. He had spun on his own in the bus stop, so not a great day for Penske. And this is just a week after the race after New Hampshire, where we saw all 3 Penske cars finish in the top 5, and overall just looked faster than any other team on the racetrack that day, outside of the 10 car of Almirola by the end of the race. So it's just complete polar opposite races for him. The good news is there is only one road course race in the playoffs, and Logano held his own. He won stage 1. He was having a good day. He was at least in the top 10 when Keselowski had spun into him that last time, even though he was in the back half of the top 10. He's 9th at the end of stage 2, so he's probably like 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere around there. So he's still having a good day. And Blaney was up there early. Once he spun out, he never got back inside the top 10, which is kind of odd. He did finish at Watkins Glen 5th, and he does have 2 top 10s there as well. So it's a track that he's not bad at. So that was kind of odd to see him running for the most part outside the top 15, or not top 15. He was running in the top 15, but he wasn't quite back in the top 10 after he had spun earlier in the race. He has won at the Roval before, so all the road courses that are in the playoffs, it's probably his best one. So maybe for his sake that'll work out all right if he makes it to the round of 12. Of course, same goes for Keselowski and Logano. Well, Keselowski's just not good on road courses in general. He hasn't been good at Watkins Glen in almost a decade, and it's the other road courses haven't shaped up too well for him, really at all, hardly at all at least. So I don't have very high hopes for Keselowski in the playoffs, but that's kind of been the same thing I've been talking about for weeks. But anyway, let's get into the finishing results of this race. So we mentioned Kyle Larson got the win. He led 27 laps. I believe all 27 of those were the final 27 laps of the race. 5 more playoff points, and he actually ties Denny Hamlin for the regular season points lead. That is another 15 playoff points going to the regular season champ. So the fact that he's got 5 wins this season, I think he's got like 12 stage wins this year. And so, I mean, 12 plus 25 already would be 37 playoff points. So he's got 37 playoff points, not counting if he wins the regular season championship. It gets another 15 there. That would then give him 52 playoff points if he wins the regular season championship. And that's not even counting if he wins another race. He's very good at Michigan. I think he's got, 3 career wins there, and we still go to Michigan in a couple weeks. And that was with Chip Ganassi Racing. Now he's with Hendrick. So, I mean, he could honestly go off and click another win away there in a couple weeks. He's won 2 road courses this year. I'm sure he'll have a good run next week at Indy and maybe contend there as well. So, and that's not even counting the races in the playoffs, like Las Vegas he's already won at. That's in the playoffs. Bristol he seems to be pretty good at, and that's in the playoffs. Richmond he has a win at in his NASCAR career, and that's also in the playoffs. So definitely a lot of good tracks for Larson still coming up this season. All right, so Larson again with the win. Chase Elliott finished in second. Martin Truex Jr. led 34 laps during that race in the middle stages of the race. Also got a stage win, finished third. Kyle Busch was pretty good all day, finished fourth. Denny Hamlin ended up finishing fifth. William Byron sixth. Christopher Bell seventh. Eighth was Kevin Harvick. Chase Briscoe with a good top 10 run in ninth. Interesting fact, Chase Briscoe's only got 3 top 10s this year. They've all been on road courses, and they've actually been the last 3 road course races. Tyler Reddick has also rounded out the top 10. Great points day. He had some stage points there early, as did Austin Dillon, but Dillon didn't quite get the finish that he would have wanted back in 15th versus Tyler Reddick finishing 10th. So he outscored him in stage points. He outscored him in the race points. And now Tyler Reddick is still the last driver in on points right now, but he is a 15-point cushion instead of a 5-point cushion on Tyler Reddick, on his teammate Austin Dillon. So that does help him. Knowing Daytona, is the regular season finale. If you're that 16th driver in points and somebody below the cutoff line wins at Daytona or even Indianapolis, I think could be a wild card race as well, with it being the first year the Cup Series is going there. That cannot be a settling feeling there for Reddick. He's trying to catch Harvick in points, and I think Harvick outpointed him yesterday, so it's going to be tough to get him. He's probably, last I remember, he was about 75 points behind him, so it's going to be tough to get Harvick in these last few races. He's going to have to hope for him to have a bad run, and not only Daytona, but maybe even next weekend he can outpoint him at Indy with it being a new road course that Briscoe is actually good at because he won the Xfinity race there last year. And we've seen Harvick run very terrible on the new road courses this year. The road courses he has experience on, like Sonoma, like Watkins Glen, he had top 10s, but those newer tracks, though, like the Daytona road course he was terrible at earlier this year. He spun a couple times. He also had a bad run at Coda. He got that wreck early on. Obviously, it wasn't really his fault, but he was still running outside the top 10 when it happened. And then also at Road America, he was really, really bad. He was like 20th the whole race. So, and then ended up finishing like 27th because he had to pit there late for some reason. I don't know if he flat spotted a tire. So that could be a race that Reddick could actually gain quite a few points on Kevin Harvick, or maybe a guy like Briscoe wins, and then Harvick's the last driver above the cutoff line going into Daytona, and that could be an unsettling feeling. So a lot could still happen as far as the playoff picture is looking. I think that's pretty much all we have to cover for the actual race itself. Now we review my predictions from yesterday's race. So every week on the predictions video that usually uploads within a few hours at least, or usually it's a live stream now, but live stream of the NASCAR Fantasy Podcast. The predictions, we go through drivers that you shouldn't put in your fantasy lineup, drivers that are probably not going to have a good day. the sleeper picks, drivers you can maybe put as a garage pick, or maybe if you, especially now with maybe not having too many usages left for some of those top guys, that you could throw these guys in the lineup, and the top guys that I think will contend for the win, or at least have a good solid day in the top 10. I pretty much nailed the predictions to a T yesterday. We'll start off actually with the drivers that were must-haves. Usually I start with the don't-haves, but we'll start off with the must-haves. I actually had four of them. Usually I only have two or three for each, but I actually had four for the must-haves, and I went above and beyond, and they all had really good days. Chase Elliott came from the rear twice and got up to second place by the end of the race, so obviously that was good. I said that Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin were the three Gibbs cars to look out for. I think that they could have had a chance to contend for the win. Truex contended for the win, finished third, actually led the most laps, had a stage win. Great day for Truex. Kyle Busch finished fourth, and Denny Hamlin ran top 10 all day and finished in fifth. So all four drivers that I said would at least finish in the top 10 at bare minimum or contend for the win pretty much contended for the win, or at least, again, finished in the top five. So completely nailed that. As far as the sleeper picks go, it looked like I was going to be right with Ross Chastain. He was in the top 10 for most of the day. I don't know what happened late, but he ended up falling outside the top 10 there in the last dozen laps of the race. Last I checked, he was like ninth place. He was ninth place with about 10 laps to go, and he ended up finishing 12th. So I don't know exactly how he fell back. It, I don't know. I really don't know. Kurt Busch ended up finishing 13th. He was also one of the sleeper picks that I had. I had two of them this week. So they both finished outside the top 10. I was wrong there. I think Kurt Busch could have actually, well, obviously Chastain was running there and he didn't finish in the top 10, so I was wrong there. And Kurt Busch didn't finish in the top 10 either, but I was wrong there. Kurt Busch actually led a couple laps in the race during those final pit stops. I feel like if Kurt Busch would have stayed on the same strategy that the leaders were on, he could have had a top 10. Because by playing the strategy he did, he stayed out longer than everybody else. And he didn't have the track position that Denny Hamlin did when trying that strategy. So that's why Hamlin got a top 5 with it. Kurt Busch got put even further back in traffic. I think when he actually came out of the pits, he was like 18th with about 20 laps to go. And the field obviously was very spaced apart at that point in time, so he was cutting through the field, but ended up 13th. He fell a few spots short there by the end. Bob Mayo, 66. Welcome to the stream. Dang it, Chase finished second. LOL. Yeah, it was a really, really good effort by Chase Elliott. It was definitely fun to watch him, and he almost pulled off a feat that only two drivers in NASCAR history have ever done, which would be start outside the top 30 on a road course and win. And he already did that once this season at Road America. He was the second driver to ever do it, and he almost did it second time himself, and would have been the third time ever in NASCAR history, in the Cup Series at least, that would have happened. So that's just insane. He almost did that literally in two straight road course races. They got to stop. This is kind of the issue with Hendrick Motorsports too, is they fail inspection a lot. And I get they're trying, to push the issue and see what they can, they're trying to get the fastest race car possible on the racetrack as close to the rule book as they possibly can. And we see that with a lot of teams, and especially Hendrick Motorsports in the past, but that's what makes them good. That's how it's not manipulating the rules by any means. That's just a part of racing. It's been a part of NASCAR since its heyday. So, and the fact that they are the team I feel like that tested the most is probably why they are the fastest over the last couple decades. Is probably why they, between that and having the talented drivers to back it up, like Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, or like today with Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, why that they are able to actually have the success that they do, and it really is a testament. The problem is when it bites them, like it did yesterday with Chase Elliott. Elliott's had to start at the rear a lot this season because of it. We've seen Larson start at the rear a couple times earlier in the season as well, and he had to come from behind for some of those races. Darlington was a big race where I think he could have won if he didn't have to start at the rear and come from the back because Truex was so fast that day. Larson was just as fast, but he never got the track position to be up there with Truex because there wasn't a lot of cautions throughout the race. Much like there was with Watkins Glen yesterday with Chase Elliott's issue. So it can bite them. I think when they get into the playoffs, especially deeper in the playoffs, like the round of 8 on, they need to be not quite pushing it, that issue, especially like with Kansas being a 400-mile race, and even the championship race at Phoenix. I think they'll be a little more lenient at Phoenix anyway, knowing there will be practice and qualifying. That could be a big issue too, is a lot of these races they have had to start the rear failing inspection. They haven't had practice or qualifying, so they're unloading at the racetrack, trying to give everything they got, and they really don't know until tech inspection, not what they can really do with the race car that would be with the rules. The rules that would have been awesome if you won. I was in your pre-race and during the race. Yeah, yeah, thanks. I definitely remember seeing you in the chat there, Bob, and appreciate it always. Appreciate it as always. Uh, so we went through the sleeper picks. We went through the must-haves, the don't-haves. I had two of those as well. These were drivers that I told you not to put in your fantasy lineup. I did not trust that they were at least going to finish inside the top 10. And one of them I nailed perfectly, and that was Brad Keselowski. Keselowski finished 35th, 3 laps down with that damage he ended up having after spinning on his own in turn 1. And the fact he spun out once from the lead in stage 1, then he spun out once mid-pack in stage 1, got lucky that nobody hit him, and he was able to regather it again, but that threw him even off strategy even more, and he was never able to really get the full track position back. Actually did rally back to the top 10 before spinning that final time into Joey Logano. It was just a rough day for Brad Keselowski. He was just overdriving the car too much, in over his head, and I think we've kind of seen it at Michigan the last couple of years, where he's getting desperate to win some of these races because he knows. I'm not saying he's going to retire within the next couple of years, but as far as like competitive years left, you don't know how many more opportunities you're going to get. And I say Michigan because that's his home track. He said winning that would be like winning the Daytona 500 for me. And another race, the Daytona 500. How many times have we seen in recent years that he's gotten into an accident late? Whether it's his fault or not his fault, he still just never can get to the end of the race. Um, and attrition becomes an issue, I guess, with Keselowski in these types of races that he hasn't won in, or yeah, exactly right there that he hasn't won in. So I think that definitely gets put into play. Ashton G, welcome to the stream as well. Brad Keselowski spun in the first lap. Well, he didn't spin in the first lap. It was like lap 10 because he led the first 9. But yeah, he did spin early from the lead, and then he spun again at lap 18. And then, the final stage when he spun into Joey Logano, giving both cars heavy damage. Keselowski got the worst end of that. Ended up being 3 laps down at the end. Logano finished 22nd. He was still on the lead lap at least, but obviously costing them both a chance at a pretty good finish there. So he was the first driver on the don't have list, and then the other driver I had as far as drivers that you were supposed to stay away from yesterday would have been Aric Almirola. I think when it comes to road courses, it's pretty obvious for that. He hasn't had a great season, but he was coming off a win at New Hampshire, so I wanted to make sure you guys were kind of pumping the brakes a little bit. Like, okay, Haas is starting to turn it around, and I'd say so with the 750 package, except that Almirola is just not good on road courses. He hasn't finished in the top 10 on road course in his NASCAR Cup Series career, and he didn't again yesterday. Finished 16th and ran outside the top 10 all day as well. So I was right for both don't haves. I was right for all 4 of the must haves that they all finished in the top 5. And the 2 sleeper picks finished 12th and 13th, which is all right, but I said that they were going to get top 10, so I'll accept when I'm wrong there. So overall, though, pretty good. 6-2. That I pretty much nailed the predictions. My race win pick was Chase Elliott, and he ended up coming a close second place. Almost got that extra set of bonus points for the fantasy team right there. And with stating that, that is going to lead us into the next segment of the NASCAR Fantasy Podcast. Of course, it is going to be the fantasy portion. You can join the NASCAR Fantasy League on the NASCAR mobile app or website. All you have to do is search for KRC League. You can sign up with your email, free to join. And you have a chance to win 2 tickets to any NASCAR race of your choosing in 2022, excluding the Daytona 500. I will buy you a ticket, as well as if you're under the age of 18, it has to be an adult supervision. You're specifically like your parent or your guardian. So I'll buy you guys tickets. And again, any race you're choosing, excluding the Daytona 500. I say that because the Daytona 500 is extremely expensive, and I'm already going there next year myself, so it's going to be pretty pricey. So I'm not going to do that. But I will definitely follow up on that if you win either the regular season championship or the playoff championship. So yesterday on the fantasy league, let me get this pulled up real quick. I did actually take a look at how I did, and I did pretty well. Cutting in again. If I win it, I don't have to spend that extra money on the tickets for you guys next year. So there is an incentive in there for me to play and to actually win. You may think it's kind of cheap that way, but at the same time, too, like it's my money. I can do with it what I want. So anyway, let's see here. Fantasy games. And by the way, KRC would be all caps, capital L for league in there. We only have a couple races. Everybody, by the way, is qualified for the playoffs as well in a few weeks. So uh, obviously, you're not going to win the regular season championship because you only will have played for the last 3 races, but you automatically qualify for the playoffs. Everybody is set up at 0 when the playoffs begin. So yesterday I had Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch had a great day, ended up finishing 4th. Kevin Harvick, who also finished in the top 10, ran top 10 all day, finished 8th. Chase Elliott came from the rear twice, did score stage points in stage 1 as well, got up to 8th still, which I didn't even think that he could do, but Chase Elliott, as I mentioned in the pre-race yesterday, is a god on road courses, and NASCAR ended up finishing 2nd. Great there. Christopher Bell, he also started at the rear, was in the top 10. Finished 2nd in stage 2, so a lot of stage points there, and ended up finishing 7th in the race and was contending for the win there early in the final stage as well. And then I had Ross Chastain and Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch was in my garage, so I didn't play him. I played Chastain because he actually had 5 stage points yesterday, and then I figured that he could have gotten a top 10, which he fell out of it late, but he still outscored Kurt by 6, so I was right there. And he ended up finishing 12th, so not bad. I still had all 5 guys in the top 12 and 4 of which in the top 8. So I will definitely take that. As far as the bonus points go, Hendrick Motorsports and Chevy did win. I predicted Chase Elliott to win. So I did get bonus points for the manufacturer and for the race winning team with Kyle Larson winning. Those are the only bonus points I got. Obviously, I had Elliott to win, so I had him as the top Chevy. Came a close 2nd place in both of those. Logano got taken out by his teammate. I had him as the top Ford. And the top Toyota, I had Kyle Busch, and Truex pretty much outran him for most of the day. And even Bell before the contact with Kyle Larson. But still, Kyle Busch had a good day, but couldn't quite catch Truex there late. And as far as the overall league standings yesterday for Watkins Glen, we'll take a look at that. So our winner at Watkins Glen yesterday was Sauce Mafia and Austin Dillon fan. I believe that is Tyler Burbeck, if I'm not mistaken, with 210 points. On his team yesterday, he also had Chase Elliott, also had Ross Chastain, and then he also had Christopher Bell. The 2 drivers he had different from me were Martin Truex Jr., who had a pretty good day, and Tyler Reddick. So Reddick would have outscored Truex would have outscored my Kyle Busch, and then Tyler Reddick. Trying to think. Well, he had Chastain, so I would have actually had him beat with Harvick over Reddick. But where he really got me was the bonus points. We both had Chevy and Hendrick Motorsports, but he also had Martin Truex Jr. as the top Toyota driver, so he got 5 extra points that I didn't, and he beat me by 5 points. So that was literally the difference maker. We had very similar teams to one another, but he beat me in the bonus points yesterday. So that is that. As far as the overall league standings right now, in the chat inside Uranus is currently leading as of right now. I did cut that deficit down a little bit. I continue to be in 2nd place. And if I do my math here, 39-17. So I went from, I believe I was 56 points behind him going into the race weekend. And now I'm like 53. Yeah, 53 points. So I did gain a few points on him. He was very up there in the points yesterday as well. But if you're within 200 points, you mathematically have a shot. Again, 210 points was yesterday's winner. For most of the races this season, anybody who's won has been within that 200 to like 260 even point range. So if you're within 200 points, you really have a good shot of still winning, especially with Daytona being the regular season finale. Again, I'm in 2nd place, about 53 points back. Another 27 points behind me would be Andrew Hollenbach. 5 points behind Andrew Hollenbach is P-Chat Motorsports, Patrick Shadley in the chat. And then yesterday's winner at Watkins Glen, Tyler Burbeck, is sitting right now 5th with Tim Irvin only 1 point behind him in sixth. So it's still very, very close within the top six for right now. That is going to round out the fantasy portion of the NASCAR Fantasy Podcast. Kyle Weston fan, welcome to the stream. Who do I think is the most underrated and most overrated drivers in NASCAR? I think the most underrated is Eric Jones. I don't think he really. I'd say Eric Jones or William Byron. Uh, I'd almost lean towards Byron because people look at him as the fourth best driver at Hendrick. And I would say at times, yes, too. He's more consistent than Alex Bowman. He keeps his car clean more than Kyle Larson. I feel like Larson wrecks going for the win a lot or is a little over aggressive at times. William Byron takes care of his equipment. You hardly ever see William Byron DNF unless it's somebody else's incident. So there's that, and I think just the level that he was at in the truck in the Xfinity Series. He went into the truck series his first career year. He won 7 races, just missed out on the championship. First year at the age of 19 in the Xfinity Series, he wins the championship. And then he debuts in the Cup Series. He wins the Rookie of the Year, even though it was an underwhelming rookie season. Still won the Rookie of the Year over Daniel Hemrick, and then ends up making the playoffs. First time in the second year, which was pretty much any expectation, I think, for any second-year driver, especially in Hendrick Motorsports equipment. You got to make the playoffs. He did that. And then in his third year, he got his first career win and made an even deeper run into the playoffs into the round of 12. Comes out of the gate this year. He's looking stronger than ever. He won a race in just the third race of the season. He had that long 11 straight top 10 streak, and he has cooled off since then, but he's still well inside the top 10 in points right now. Let me take a look at this. William Byron is still third in points. Yeah, so, I mean, he's just having a quiet but really good season. He's still third in points. I'll talk about him a little bit more when we get into the power rankings here in a couple of moments. So I would probably lean on Byron, probably being the most underrated driver. I'd say Eric Jones is a close second. I mean, he won the Southern 500 for Pete's sakes. If you win at Darlington, especially in the Cup Series, especially when he was head to head with Kyle Busch there late, and he fended him off to win that race a couple years ago. And then also had another win at Daytona. So he's got the same amount of wins as William Byron as well. And I'd say pretty similar equipment. Now he's in Richard Petty Motorsports. He deserves a lot better than RPM equipment. That is guaranteed. There's just not enough Toyota rides, and he was in the Toyota pipeline, so he kind of got the short end of the stick, unfortunately. Hopefully he could bounce back into a very competitive ride when that contract's up with Richard Petty. So I'd probably lean there. As far as like overrated driver, I think it might be a little too soon to say Cole Custer. But at the same time, too, when there was the big three in the Xfinity Series a couple years ago between Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, and Cole Custer, Reddick won back-to-back championships. Christopher Bell won the most races. And Custer, I felt like, was just kind of there. Like, he'd won races from time to time. Remember, he won that Truck Series race at New Hampshire at the age of 16, which is very impressive. He's got talent, but since getting into the Cup Series, he does have one career win, too, and would have won the Rookie of the Year last year. But, I mean, you look at this year, and hopefully it's just a sophomore slump for his sake. Does he deserve another year in Stewart-Haas Racing equipment? I don't know. It's really up for debate. If he does, you got to go 1-year contract. It can't be multi-year. I think you got to give him 1 more year. And if he runs outside, if he misses the playoffs again next year, I think you got to cut ways with Custer, which is a big shame for Stewart-Haas Racing because when he was in that 0-0 for those 3 seasons in the Xfinity Series, I think they were really banking on Cole Custer being the next big thing with Stewart-Haas Racing. Knowing Kurt Busch was probably getting up there and they couldn't really afford him. Knowing Almirola was a good veteran driver to have on the team, but he wasn't going to really compete for championships. And they were really banking on Custer being the next big thing in the Stewart-Haas Racing development program. And I think he is definitely underwhelmed up to this point, but he's still young as far as his Cup Series career goes. I'd probably lean towards him. I really don't know of the guys in the Cup Series right now who would be overrated. Matt DiBenedetto and Bubba Wallace have both been there, I think. I hate to say it because they both have a pretty big fan base. Both polarizing drivers for different circumstances. But honestly, with 2311 being a new team, I'd almost cut Bubba Wallace some slack for this year. If obviously they have the same results next year, that's an issue. And I said that from the get-go this season, that I expected them to miss the playoffs. So yeah, I wasn't buying the hype train that team was going to make the playoffs their first year in the Cup Series. As far as Matt DiBenedetto goes, he has shown that he can compete for wins on occasion, but he just can't seal the deal. It's the same issue that Daniel Hemrick is having in the Xfinity Series, whether it's his fault or not his fault. We've seen DiBenedetto, just not have the luck at the end of the race. But even when he doesn't have the luck at the end of the race, he just chokes it away like he did at Talladega this year. He had that race in the bag, but he decided to block the outside that had not as much momentum as the inside. And he was already on the inside, so he just kind of he blew that race. And last year at Talladega, he was just trying to hold on, but then he got overly aggressive. And whether you like the double line rule or not, he did shove shove William Byron below the double yellow line. So I feel like if anybody were to win that race, you could probably lean on Byron and not so much DiBenedetto, even though people were mad that DiBenedetto didn't win. But I think that was mostly his fault. I mean, we've seen drivers try to just side draft. I look at the dual race earlier this season when who was it? It was either Almirola or Austin Dillon. They both won their dual races, but I forget which one it was. I think it was the Dillon. It was the second dual race that Austin Dillon won because Bubba Wallace had the run and Dillon raced him clean, but he side drafted him and pulled him right back and beat him by a nose at the start finish line. Versus what DiBenedetto did, and you just got aggressive and he's like, oh, I haven't won before, I need to win, and just kind of slammed him out of the way, just like a instant reaction. But it was obviously, in hindsight, it was the wrong decision. But I don't know how Byron didn't wreck there, but yeah. Anyway, I probably lean towards DiBenedetto right now of being the biggest overrated driver. But we also haven't seen him in A-tier equipment either. So I will say that too. And the same goes for Bubba Wallace. We haven't seen them in A-tier equipment. We have seen them in B-level equipment. At least most people would think that 2311 would be at least B-level equipment. They haven't really looked like it this year. But that's kind of where I'd throw them in there. And Wood Brothers is really B-level. It's not the same stuff that Penske's got. A lot of people say it's basically a fourth Penske car. It really isn't. I mean, I think with Martin Truex Jr. winning with Front Row Motorsports, winning the championship back in 2017 with them, I think that kind of put in everybody's mindset that basically every affiliated team with a top tier team is basically an extra car for that top tier team. And I just don't think that's the case. I think that was just a once in a lifetime, a once in a once in a blue moon kind of situation there where that was the case with JGR, because then with Levine Family Racing, that wasn't the case. I don't think the Wood Brothers is that case either, because even when Ryan Blaney was running with the Wood Brothers too, yeah, he won a race, and he did make it to the round of 8 of the playoffs one year. The couple seasons before that, he was missing the playoffs, like DiBenedetto's in danger of doing this year, and DiBenedetto barely scraped in last year. So it's just kind of like they're not there. They're basically, the Wood Brothers is equivalent to Chip Ganassi Racing Equipment, in my opinion. It's RCR. I think they're kind of that level. They're not the top tier team. They're not a fourth Penske car. They're their own team. They just get some borrowed parts from Penske. That's really all it is. And some added funding from Menards too, I guess, would be up there as well. Just join the fantasy league. Yeah, welcome and thanks. Thanks for doing that. All right, into the power rankings. We got to get this done quick because we have the NASCAR Heat 5 career mode race at the Roval coming up very, very shortly. So we're going to get through this power rankings list pretty quickly. I know it's been a couple weeks, so it'll be a little bit of a refresher of who we have in the top 10. There is one change of a new driver in the top 10 that was not there the last couple of races. But for the most part, the top of the field still stays the same. So the drivers that did change, I will briefly talk about them. As far as the drivers that didn't change, I'm not going to talk about them as much. At number 10 last week, or 3 weeks ago, I guess, after the New Hampshire race, we had Brad Keselowski at number 10 on the list because he, in my opinion, was the third best Penske car. And up until a few races ago, he went on that long dry spell of only having like 2 top 10s in a 12-race stretch. It was really bad. And then he got a couple top 10s at Pocono, and then he ended up having another one at New Hampshire with a top 5 there. So it was starting to go the right way. And then yesterday, after he had spun not once, not twice, but 3 times, once from the lead, then he took out his teammate And this other driver that I threw inside the top 10 also has a win. His statistics are about the same as Keselowski. And in fact, in recent races, although they've both been getting a little bit better, I'd say this guy has been a little bit hotter than Brad Keselowski. And that'd be Christopher Bell. I put Christopher Bell on the list for the first time in at least a couple months. He's been in the top 10. I know he's still well outside the top 10 in points, but again, he has really turned it on as of late. Both him and Keselowski have one win on the season, so they're tied there. They also both have the same amount of top 10s this season with 9 top 10s as well. As far as top 5s, Brad Keselowski hasn't beat stage wins. They both have 2 stage wins, so very similar in stats. Keselowski is ahead of him in points, but I basically put Bell in over Keselowski for the what have you done lately for me, because that is a big thing when it comes to power rankings of any kind. Currently, Christopher Bell has 4 straight top 8 finishes. He finished 7th at Watkins Glen yesterday, competed for a win, finished 2nd at New Hampshire, 8th at Atlanta, and 2nd at Road America. So 4 straight top 8 finishes. Then when we look at Brad Keselowski in the last 4 races, yes, he has turned it around compared to what he had been at before. But obviously, he had a bad showing yesterday, finished in 35th. Did finish 3rd at New Hampshire, 10th at Atlanta, which is similar to where Christopher Bell was. Road America was 13th, not good. So you have 4 straight top 8s for Christopher Bell versus Brad Keselowski only has 2 top 10s. You got to go Christopher Bell ahead of Brad Keselowski. And with only 10 spots in the top 10 list, I just don't think Keselowski is the top 10 driver right now. And I've been saying for a while he could be eliminated in the round of 16. I still think that is possible. He has turned it around slowly, so I'm maybe leaning around to 12, but I don't think he gets past the round of 12 this year. I really don't. I know he made it to the championship 4 last year, but it's night and day the difference of a season he had last year versus this season. Coming in at number 9, this hasn't changed. Ryan Blaney's been at like number 8 or 9 basically the last like 3 or 4 races. He cooled off there for a little bit, but then which is why he dropped from about like 4th, 5th, 6th in the power rankings list like he was early in the season down to that 8th through like 10th range really. But I think he's still in 9th. Again, he's better than Brad Keselowski. He's even further ahead of points than Keselowski is. So as far as like being ahead of Bell, he's like literally like half in the standings of where Christopher Bell's at. Blaney is currently 8th in the point standings. Christopher Bell is 15th. Blaney has 2 stage wins, same amount as Christopher Bell. He's got more top 5s and more top 10s on top of the race win ahead in points. So Blaney is number 9. But that hasn't changed. He was at 9th before. This driver has actually moved down a little bit, and I was talking highly of him before with being underrated, but he's still in the top 10 on this list, and that's William Byron. Really, the only reason Byron is so far down versus where he was before is the lack of playoff points. He does have 1 win on the season, but when you start to get deeper into the season where you have a lot of drivers with multiple wins, you got Kyle Larson with 5, you got Elliott with 2, you've got Bowman with 3, you've got Martin Truex Jr. with 3. That's going to start to hurt him when you get a deeper run into the playoffs. I do think with his consistency, if he survives Talladega, that he really can make it to the round of 8, but the lack of playoff points is likely going to keep him out of the championship 4 as of right now. Obviously, if he goes out and wins the Daytona regular season finale like he did last year, that'll be 5 more playoff points. Maybe we can start talking about him maybe having a chance at the championship 4 again with consistency, but I would probably lean on him right now being a round of 8 driver. That's why I have him 8th right there, but I don't see him advancing beyond that. He is by far having a better season than the other drivers I've already talked about, Keselowski, Blaney, and Bell, so pretty obvious to have him at number 8. At number 7, I have his teammate Alex Bowman. The only reason I have Bowman ahead of Byron is the 2 wins, and he actually has 1 more stage win, or 2 more stage wins than William Byron as well. Byron is 3rd in the regular season standings. That would give him 8 playoff points, because remember, I know it's 15 playoff points for the regular season champion, but from 9th through 10th would be just like how stage points are with the playoff points at the end of the regular season, where 2nd place is going to be getting 9 playoff points, 3rd place is going to get 8, all the way down to 10th gets 1. Bowman is 11th right now in the standings, so he would not get any additional playoff points for his regular season standings if the regular season ended today. Now, he is within striking distance of guys like Christopher Bell, Kevin Harvick, who are in the top 10 right now still, especially if Harvick misses the playoffs completely, which he doesn't have a win, so you never know. That could happen. Blaney's still within striking distance. He could get a couple playoff points there, but he's definitely not going to be anywhere close to Byron up there in 3rd, who would get 8. but he does have 2 more stage wins than Byron. He's got 2 less top 10s than William Byron and 2 less top 5s, but again, it's 5 playoff points per race win. That gives him 10 more than Byron right there, just off of race wins alone, and then 2 more with the stage win. So I have Alex Bowman moving from 8th to 7th, moving ahead of Byron. Just swap those guys back and forth there. Joey Logano's at number 6. I had him there before. I think that's just a good fit for him. Best driver at Penske. Up until New Hampshire, I just didn't think that Penske was honestly going to have a threat of making it to the championship four, really. Any one of the three. Keselowski's been pretty bad this year. Blaney's just been inconsistent. He's very streaky. Like, Blaney started off on a cold streak, and then he got super hot when he won at Atlanta and then was clicking off. I think he had 7 straight top 11s. Then he cooled off again. He's starting to pick it back up in the right direction, but then coming off this 2-week break, he finishes 14th at the Glen. So it's like he might go back into another cold streak, which is not good with the playoffs around the corner. But that's kind of been Blaney's career, especially this season, for sure this season. Joey Logano has had good runs lately. Obviously not a good run yesterday. It wasn't much of his fault. It didn't win a stage, but it wasn't a great finish. Didn't want to move him up or down. Everybody that is ahead of him, the top 5, all finished in the top 5 yesterday versus Logano 22nd. So couldn't really move Logano up. Didn't want to move him back either because he is much further ahead of points than Alex Bowman as well. I think he was sitting 6th in the regular season standings. 5th. He's 5th in the regular season standings is Logano. So Joey Logano in 6th right there. Coming in at number 5, a guy that actually dropped outside of my personal championship 4, is Denny Hamlin. And again, same reason I bumped Byron back a spot is the lack of playoff points. Now, I had Martin Truex Jr. outside the top 4 for quite some time, the last few races at least, because he started to cool off, but he is really starting to pick it back up again. Now that he's starting to get some momentum going his way and having more playoff points than Denny Hamlin, that's going to help. Also, Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson are tied for the regular season championship. So Hamlin needs those 15 playoff points without any wins this season. He does have 5 stage wins, so he's got 5 playoff points there. If he can win the regular season championship, that would give him 20. But comparative to the wins and the stage wins Truex has, plus being where he's at in regular season standings, Truex would actually have more playoff points than Hamlin, even if Hamlin wins the regular season championship, if Hamlin does not win a race before the playoffs start. So I just don't... between that and now that Hamlin is looking like he might lose the regular season championship to Kyle Larson, if that happens, he's going to lose 6 more playoff points at least, if not more, if he falls even further outside the top 2. I just don't trust that. Again, round of 8 is almost a lock just with the consistency Hamlin's had this season. Much like Byron, the consistency will get them to the round of 8. The lack of playoff points will keep him out of the championship 4 if this continues, unless he can click away some wins. He's got some good tracks coming up for him. He's won at Darlington, 3 times? No, 5 times. He's won at Darlington, I think I had it right, 3. I don't know. He's won at Darlington at least a few times, including once last year. So that could be a good track for him. Obviously, Daytona's a good track for him. Richmond's a good track for him. He's a good short track racer. Obviously, with the short tracks, Bristol's in there. So, honestly, of the next 6 races, he's got 3 or 4 of them. You could put an argument that he could compete for a win. So, I mean, you never know. Hamlin could. I have more confidence Hamlin would win a race over Harvick, but I'm not fully confident that either one will get one either. So Martin Truex Jr. just kind of mentioned he moves up into the championship 4. He's currently 4th. He's just not quite as consistent for the season as a whole compared to the top 3 ahead of him, but I did want to move him into the championship 4 because of the much more playoff points he's got versus Denny Hamlin. So the top 3 all stays the same from last week to this week, and actually they've been the same for 2 straight races now. So since Atlanta, these have been my top 3. Chase Elliott at number 3, Kyle Busch at number 2, Kyle Larson at number 1. And I know Chase Elliott performed very well yesterday, but kind of what I mentioned a little bit earlier in the episode is that there's only one race in the playoffs that's a road course. Yes, Chase Elliott's a road course king, but there's only one of the final 10 races on a road course at the Roval. So yes, he could go out and win that race and get to the round of 8. And he has won at Martinsville before, but he hasn't been as great on the ovals this year compared to the last couple of seasons where you see him win 2 to 3 races on ovals. He hasn't won any on ovals this year, mainly because Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch have been taking it away from him, more specifically Kyle Larson. Even his teammate Bowman has 3 wins too, so I guess between all 3 of those guys are taking away those oval wins. And Truex has 3 oval wins as well. He's just not up there on the ovals, and I think that could be the downfall for him winning the championship at Phoenix and maybe even getting into the championship 4. But he has more playoff points and more wins than Hamlin, Logano, Blaney, Byron. So I think that could help Elliott get to the championship 4 alone because he is at least consistent on the ovals. He's just not really competing for the wins as much as these top two, which would be Kyle Larson at number 1, Kyle Busch at number 2 once again. Larson with his win yesterday, obviously you can't knock him out of the number 1 spot, even though I mentioned after New Hampshire, or after Atlanta, because Busch had the DNF at New Hampshire. After Atlanta, I said that Kyle Larson was like here because he was slowly starting to cool off, and Kyle Busch was heating up, winning at Kansas and Pocono within a 7-race stretch, that he was closing in on him. Well, Larson wins again, so he takes that step up there just a little bit more. Probably not that much. It probably goes from here to like here. So Larson does stretch that out again. We'll see what Kyle Busch can do in the coming weeks to see if he can close in any more closer. So, yeah, there we go. Oh, wow, just moved in the top 5 in fantasy. Yep, yeah, you had a good day yesterday. I believe you won, if I'm not mistaken. And welcome to the stream as well. All right, so that wraps it up. That's all we have for talking points in this one. I think we got to get that NASCAR Heat 5 career mode race underway. That'll be starting within a couple of minutes here. Thanks for everybody watching this one. Like, share, and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. We do full race live streams of the realistic broadcast to help my own commentary. Hopefully one day getting into the sport of NASCAR as a commentator in the booth on Sundays. Obviously way down the road, but hoping that would be my dream. It's part of why I started this channel, mostly why I started this channel. But along the way, getting to talk with you guys about NASCAR on the race weekends, doing the live commentary. You guys enjoy my commentary. I greatly appreciate it. It only grows the support that I have for you guys just as much as what you have for me. So, again, I appreciate it as always. And every like, every share, and obviously every subscriber goes a really, really long way. So, appreciate it. Always try to thank you guys as much as I possibly can. That's why I try to shout you guys out as much as I can during the streams when I see you guys recurring in the chat, especially time after time after time. So thanks, everybody. That is going to end this one. Again, we have our NASCAR Heat 5 career mode race tonight, our long-awaited race. It's been 1 week, a little over a week. It's been 8 days now since the last Heat 5 career mode race. I know you guys are ready for that one. It'll be the final race of the round of 12 at Charlotte Roval. It'll be a fun one here today. So thanks. I'll see you guys in a couple minutes. And yeah, thanks.